Hello, my name's Barry Osborne, and it's my privilege to facilitate a discussion on parts of the Bible. It's a group of Christian friends who meet online each week, and we work through various books of the Bible. Just recently, we've been looking at the Psalms. We're not going through all 150, but each week, one of the groups selects a psalm. This time it's Jean's turn, and Jean is going to talk to us about her psalm this evening. Just a quick word to say that I apologise. My health isn't very good tonight, and so I've got a very bad cold and not feeling at all well. So I apologise in advance for that. But hopefully you'll be able to enjoy this conversation. Listen in and have your Bible open and see if you could share your thoughts with the group. If you'd like to be an active member of the group, you can email at ruralbarry@gmail.com. ruralbarry@gmail.com. Just say you'd like to join the Bible discussion. Okay, here we go.
But welcome everybody. I hope you're looking forward to our discussion this evening. And Jean is very kindly going to introduce us to Psalm 22. So if you've got my email, I gave you the information that it was Psalm 22, and also suggested you might like to watch a Star Trek film. Did anybody watch Star Trek?
No. Used to years ago when it was in black and white.
I was absolutely amazed watching this story because it's a prequel. It's before Kirk was the captain, and there's a Captain Pike instead.
Oh, he's the one in the wheelchair.
They're drifting through space, and they come across something that looks like a comet, and it's on a course to collide with a planet, and if it does so, it'll destroy life on the planet. So they think it'd be a good idea, as the planet was populated, if they could get it to move. So they fire torpedoes at it, either to destroy it or to move it. I'm not sure which. But as they fire it, it puts up its shields. So it's not a comet, it's something else. So they then manage to get a landing party that goes inside it. One of them is a linguist, and she discovers, because she keeps humming while she's thinking, that the comet starts to imitate her. So she communicates with the comet in song. Meanwhile, the ship is under attack, while back on the Enterprise, they're under attack from a higher, more advanced people who are actually working as shepherds. They call themselves the shepherds of this thing, this comet-like thing. And apparently it's on a predetermined course and cannot be moved off the course. And so in the end, they come up with a scheme, managed to come up with a scheme to influence it enough to move it away. And they do that with a shuttlecraft. And so the planet is saved. But then they're asking the questions, well, who planned this comet? Who was the higher population that could design this comet? And why is it on a predetermined course? And it seems that even the interaction of the Star Trek team causing the comet to move slightly, instead of colliding with the planet, it showers ice onto the planet as it passes, and that advances the civilization. So it's a kind of a parable, a picture of Jesus, who came into the world with a particular purpose and was thought to be just an ordinary person, so he was rejected. But by rejecting him, it brought about salvation for others. So it seemed to me very much a wonderful parable, and perhaps relevant for what we're looking at this evening. So, Jean, what do you want to do? Do you want us to read all the way through Psalm 22 before you say anything, or do you want to speak first?
No, if we read it through, all the way through, because after that we can maybe do it in sections.
Okay, right. If we're going to read it all the way through, let me just check how many verses there are. That's 31 verses,
31.
and there's 3, 6, 8 of us here. So it's about 4 verses each. So if you like to read 4 verses, somebody start us off, and then somebody else carry on, and we work our way through. So 4 verses at a time. Somebody will start, somebody else jump in as soon as they've finished. Okay, go.
My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me, and from the words of my roaring? O my God, I cry in the daytime, but thou hearest not, and in the night season, and am not silent. But thou art holy, thou art that inhabitest the praises of Israel. Our fathers trusted in thee, they trusted, and thou didst deliver them.
They cried to you and were saved. In you they trusted and were not disappointed. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by men and despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their heads. He trusts in the Lord. Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him.
It was you who brought me safely through birth, and when I was a baby, you kept me safe. I have relied on you since the day I was born, and you have always been my God. Do not stay away from me. Trouble is near, and there is no one to help me. Many enemies surround me like bulls. They are all around me like fierce bulls from the land of Bashan.
Like lions,
Carry on.
like lions, they open their jaws against me, roaring and tearing into their prey. My life is poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax, melting within me. My strength has dried up like the sun-baked clay. My tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You have laid me in the dust and left me for dead. My enemies surround me like a pack of dogs. An evil gang closes in on me. They have pierced my hands and feet.
All my bones are on display. People stare and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among them and cast lot for my garments. But you, Lord, do not be far from me. You are my strength. Come quickly to help me. Deliver me from the sword, my precious life from the power of the dogs.
Rescue me from the mouth of the lions. Save me from the horns of the wild oxen. I will declare your name to my people. In the assembly I will praise you. You who fear the Lord, praise him. All you descendants of Jacob, honor him. Revere him, all you descendants of Israel. For he has not despised or scorned the suffering of the afflicted one. He has not hidden his face from him, but has listened to his cry for help.
From you comes my praise in the great congregation. My vows I will perform before those who fear him. The afflicted shall eat and be satisfied. Those who seek him shall praise the Lord. May your hearts live forever. All the ends of the earth shall remember and serve the Lord. And all the families of the nations shall worship before you. For kingship belongs to the Lord, and he rules over the nations.
Yeah, 29.
All the proud ones of the earth will eat and worship. All who go down to the dust will fall to their knees before him, even he who cannot keep his soul alive. Future children will serve him. They will tell of the Lord to their children. They will come and tell about his saving power to a people yet to be born. for he has done it.
Thank you all. That was very good. I actually didn't count correctly. There were 10 of us here. Just before we open it up to everybody to say what they'd like, over to Jean to say why she has chosen it and what this psalm means to you, Jean.
Well, I've got to admit something first. I know everyone I know loves psalms, and I struggle with them. Really struggle with them. I'm not very good on poetry either. Once someone's explained to me, it's not too bad. I often don't see what it's all about till somebody explains it. And so I rarely go to psalms. Now, Trish goes a lot and they give her such great comfort. And there are parts of all the psalms that give me great comfort. Now, I'm fine with the praising psalms that you sing as a song. But this is a song, it says quite clearly to mine, to the tune of the Doe of the Morning, a psalm of David. So it's definitely sung. And yet, it's such a peculiar psalm. As Barry has said, it's prophetic, and not many of the psalms are. When I read this, it was as though it should have been in Isaiah. You would expect it in Isaiah. But in a song, to me, I find this psalm stands out from all the others because it throws up so much. And I first got interested because, of course, it's the one Jesus quoted on the cross. When we were talking to a Jew, and again, I'm only passing on what I heard, he said this first verse, when someone is dying, they will say the first verse of a psalm, and that is what they will use at the funeral, because they choose the psalm they're going to sing at their funeral, and this is something they often do. And I don't know whether that's right or not. I'm just saying what a Jew told me. And so if that is so, Jesus, when he said this, was this psalm meant something to him, because it meant he chose this psalm out of all of them. And so for a long time, I've really looked at it, trying to work out about this psalm. And it seems in groups. The first two verses, David complaining, and yet the beginning of verse 3, it says, yet. And I think Fiona said something last week. David often does this. He'll have something that's negative, but then he say, but this, or yet this. And then we get the positive. And this is what we have in our lives, I think, isn't it? We've got these terrible times. We look in the Psalms, and then we get, yes, it's like that, but. And I find this psalm is an example of that. Now, what I really want to know is why David seems to be talking about himself until we get to verse 15, 16. And then all of a sudden this prophecy comes in. And it has to be a prophecy because this didn't happen to David, did it? So my understanding is 16, 17, and 18 are prophesying Jesus' death.
Yeah.
And I don't know of anywhere else where it actually prophesies his death as a crucifixion. Because again, my understanding is when David wrote this, there wasn't a punishment of crucifixion. That was a Roman punishment. And yes, David's explained it here about his hands and feet being pierced.
Yeah.
And that I find amazing, because that had to be from the Spirit, hadn't it? David couldn't have known that.
No.
And then I think somewhere later it talks about them. What do they? Oh no, it's all together. They divide my garments among them, cast lots for my clothing. And as far as I know, that's nowhere else. And I don't know if anybody else can help me over this. And yet David was writing it as a song. And yet we've got this great prophecy that he had no way of knowing what was going to happen to the Messiah. I just wondered if anybody else had thought about it and what they thought.
There's something in Isaiah about them casting lots for his clothing. Might be wrong there. Usually am. Not sure.
They're going to reject him, don't they?
Yeah.
Is that Isaiah 9?
I think most of us will realise it, think of it as a messianic psalm, that it is very significant, and there's a lot in it that relates to the crucifixion. I've got Luke 23 handy because I thought it might be useful at some stage to read Luke's account of the crucifixion, but it is one of the most outstanding passages that foretell about the crucifixion. In fact, around verse 14 and 15, somebody asked, I don't know whether it was a doctor or somebody like that, you know, what was happening, just describe the symptoms that are described there. And they said, it's obvious that the person was being crucified.
Oh.
So, to me, this psalm and Isaiah 53 are the two great parts of the Old Testament that point us to the cross and to Jesus. Anybody want to comment generally on it, and then we can work our way through and look at section by section. But anybody want to say anything generally about it?
I mean, I think that there are messianic parts in other parts of the psalm. Even this, you know, you're scorned by men, despised by the people. It's verses 6 and 7, for instance. All who see me mock me, hurl insult, shaking their heads, saying he trusts in the Lord, let the Lord rescue him. I mean, that all happened too, didn't it, at the crucifixion? So,
yes.
Yeah.
I, to be perfectly honest, I don't think it is prophecy. This is quite a controversial view, but I think Jesus, what Jesus said makes more sense to me, that this is the psalm that Jesus quoted when he was dying. And I think it's a capital mistake to say, oh, David suddenly had this vision of the cross. I think we're reading in the cross into this psalm. And I think sometimes we have to think, what did it mean to the original readers? And this is obviously someone, David, who is suffering, and it's poetry, not prophecy.
Oh.
I think it's reasonable to say that, David, to call it poetry, not prophecy. I think it's incredible in that so much of it does describe the death of Jesus. I don't know that it is right to call it prophetic, and I'm quite sure that we need to try to sort of understand what it did mean to David. But there is so much of it that finds an echo in the New Testament, in the story of Christ.
Yes,
I agree with David that this has been one of Michael's, because David could not have known if when he was writing it, he couldn't have known that was a crucifixion, because there wasn't such a thing as far as I understand.
No.
The Romans invented it.
That's what I've been told.
I mean, the point is that within the New Testament, that where some of these things are quoted in the New Testament, it refers back to the Old Testament, and links it up. So there is a tie-up between the two, but it isn't actually. I don't think we could call it prophecy.
So you wouldn't call this a prophecy. You would call it messianic. I've never heard that before.
I think that it's relevant to the death of Christ. However, I'm sure it was not written with that in mind. I'm sure that when Jesus quoted verse 1, he would have known the psalm quite well, and they would have read this psalm and sung this psalm possibly in synagogues. But the sense of despair that's in it is why Jesus would have quoted it. I mean, he didn't quote it to say, look, I am fulfilling Psalm 22. What he did was he identified himself with these words in a sense of being utterly forsaken by God.
Because
yes, then he identify himself with the whole psalm then, really, because most of it is how he would have felt.
Looking at the psalm, I think there's various themes, and one is that suffering is real and suffering can be horrible, but counterized to that, God is in his heaven, the Holy One, and then there is the promise that all the world will turn to Christ. Get very near the end of the cross, and I think that's more to what the Jews believe, that sort of suffering is part of kind of word, think of a non-Christian word, but part of our discipleship, I would say, that we at times, like Christ was called to suffer, we are called to suffer, and it doesn't, because we believe in God, doesn't mean that we live a charmed life.
Definitely not.
But it's still true. I think when people believe that, then they get disappointed with God, that God's not doing his side of the bargain. I've been following you, and you're not keeping your side. It is both true that we will, and many people will suffer who have faith, but it's also true that God is in control, and in the end, because I think their messianic ideas that someone's going to come, it's not specifically sound that, but that God, the world, all the ends of the earth will turn to God.
Well, don't you call that prophetic? I mean, verse 27, all the families of the nation will bow down before him. That is surely prophetic.
Can you let Chrissy in, Barry?
Done it.
Okay. Yeah. If that's true, the whole of the New Old Testament is prophetic, because you get this theme even back in Genesis. The story of Noah is the world, the earth is the Lord's.
It's possible to read this three ways, isn't it?
Yeah.
We could say it's the psalmist feeling a state of despair and describing how he feels in the situation. That's personal to him. There is the aspect of it tying in and pointing us towards the cross. And there's also the possibility that in some ways he was feeling about the nation of Israel. And I think, David, you were perhaps indicating that as well. It's one of the ways in which you can read this. It's read it as describing the state of the nation.
Yeah.
How do you feel about there's a line in a hymn which refers to this, where David is saying, you know, where are you? You're far from me, and so on. So there's a line: the Father turns his face away,
Mm,
and I'm uncomfortable with that. Does
yes.
anybody else want to comment? I mean, here is the psalmist is saying that he feels that God has forsaken him. He feels that God is far away, that God is not listening to him. Day and night he's crying out, but God isn't answering. God isn't apparently listening. And there are times in our lives when we go through difficulties and we cry to God for help, and it does not come.
Mm,
So the experience that is being described here is hopefully some help, because when we go through a time like that, we can look back and say, well, obviously this is what the psalmist went through, and we might say this is also what Jesus went through.
I think it was Gerard Manley Hopkins, because he was a Catholic priest, for those who are not familiar with him, and he was going through this experience of not believing or not feeling God was listening to him, and he refers to this period as dead letters sent to him who lives, alas, away. And that feeling, that you've been sending letters to somebody and the whole time they've not been at that address. So they've not read your news. They've not understood that you're going through trouble. And so, God hasn't been where your prayers have been sent. And he's going through this experience of thinking, God has forsaken me. He's not heard what I've said. He's not, or if he has heard, he's not willing to answer and help me. And it's a very chilling picture, really. Dearest him who lives, alas, away. I remember that from my advanced level studies. Made such an impression on me.
Wow.
Thank you. And while it starts with this cry of despair, that there phrases that come. I think somebody did mention about verse 3 starting with the words "yet you." That so even though he's going through things, he hasn't lost his faith in God. So there's "yet you," "in you," and "to you" in verses 3 to 5. Yet you are enthroned as the Holy One. You are the one Israel praises. In you, our ancestors put their trust. They trusted and you delivered them. To you, they tried and were saved. In you, they trusted and were not put to shame. So having proclaimed his miserable state and the fact that God seems to have abandoned him, he affirms that God is still God and that he's been faithful in the past and brought deliverance. So he's contrasting his current state of misery with his understanding of God as a God who is sovereign and God who is reigning and ruling and a God who has brought deliverance to others in the past. 6 does not find itself in the New Testament as far as I'm aware. I don't think that's ever quoted, but the psalmist feels that he's utterly worthless. I am a worm and not a man, scorned by everyone, despised by the people.
That sounds like clinical depression to me.
Yes. I think last week we were reflecting on David's physical state at one stage, the fact that he suffered with an illness and couldn't get warm, and there are other things. So we get glimpses of David, who had to cope with life like the rest of us. He's not always on the mountaintop.
No. That's despite the fact that I think I read somewhere or heard it said that David was a friend of God. God regarded him as his friend, which, if you think that God would say that to you, the honor is overwhelming.
Yeah,
Yet still he felt like this.
he said he was a man after his heart, which was
He's after his own heart, yes.
It's when you've kind of lost control of your life. And that's, our Dave has said that this is one of the hardest things, I think, for him, is when you lose control of your life. And as I said, the nurses who come in aren't helping you. They make you feel more inadequate. And I think this is the David this could be when he was hiding in the caves and running away. We don't know. And in a way, he'd lost control of his life. And I think there's nothing worse.
I was wondering whereabouts in David's life he was when he wrote this.
Yeah.
If it was written after he had become the king, which is, I think, probable, then the feeling that he was mocked by everybody, despised by people, that must have been hard, really hard. Sometimes we do our best for people, and then they turn on us, and it can be very difficult.
Yep. My thought was the story of Absalom, and how Absalom, his son, turned against him, and he had to run. And I've forgotten the name of the biblical character, but he was followed by and shouted at by this person.
May I say something?
I had an experience, I don't know if I've told you before, but I went to Australia to support my brother-in-law who was dying. He had cancer and was very, very ill. And he was in and out of hospital every so often while we were there. His lungs would fill up with fluid, and he'd need to go to the hospital to get his lungs drained. And on one occasion when we were there, he wanted us to go home. So he told me to go and get the car and take his sister and Doreen home. And I didn't immediately go, and he was so cross, he swore at me. And I found that really hard. And I felt like saying, look here, I've traveled halfway around the world. I've borrowed money. I'm now deep in debt. And all to try to be with you, and all you can do is swear at me, And as I walked away down in the dumps thinking about it, God spoke to me about Jesus, the experience Jesus had of being rejected. Even though he had come in order to bring salvation, the pathway to bring that salvation required him to be the victim of cruel mocking and cruel treatment, to have his back whipped and his hands and feet nailed to a cross. His suffering was part of the ministry that he'd come to give, but people were blind to that. But it's amazing that God used our sinfulness in order to bring our salvation.
When Clive wanted to say something, Barry.
Sorry, who was?
Clive.
I was just thinking, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just thinking, I don't like to criticize this. I find it very difficult to criticize this psalm because it's about life. It's about our lives. Yeah. There are times when we're right down in the depths. There are times when we're right down, but God comes out on top. Every time he's there to help us. So it's a lovely psalm that we can't criticize. It just buoys you up. It's beautiful. Sorry, that's all I want to say.
Yeah.
It's full of and love and everything from God, isn't it? It's absolutely, you know, wells you up. He's there.
In the good,
Oh, are you going?
in the good news, it's called
Better
A
go on and
Cry
say.
of Anguish and a Song of Praise.
Sorry about this.
Oh, is Simon saying something?
No.
No?
No.
What are you saying, Simon?
No.
Okay.
I didn't say nothing.
So in his despair, he reflects on the fact that God's had his hand on him from his conception. Verse 9 and verse 10. Yet you brought me out of the womb. You made me trust in you, even at my mother's breast. From birth I was cast on you. From my mother's womb, you have been my God. So, you know, even in his depths of despair, he's reminding himself, perhaps reminding God as well, that he has been trusting him all the way through his. And then verse 11 sort of echoes what verse 1 is saying. Do not be far from me, for trouble is near. There's no one else to help, you know.
I'm a bit like Clara. I find it absolutely fascinating, Psalm, because you can read it in so many different ways. And every time I go back, I often think I don't find the depth. I think I haven't found all he's trying to tell me. And then something else comes up, and there's so much in it that if we just read it all through, we can miss how strong these different things are. I suppose each verse is a different point that David's putting.
In my book on Psalms, it said, and we've done 51, haven't we? It says, like Psalm 51, this psalm has become traditional for use during Holy Week. The reasons for this association of the psalm with Good Friday are threefold, because of all and it goes on and on and on. But then it says at the end that the confidence in God displayed throughout the psalm moves in verses 22 to 31 to pride of place and suggests that the worshipper received from God some oracle or sign affirming that a reversal of fate was in store, that tears and pains would be replaced by songs and celebration. And Good Friday ends with the pain and tribulation, but like the psalm, looks forward to Easter with its victory and triumph. And then there's always a little thing on the side, and it said, even in the death camps, God was remembered and celebrated. And I listened to something on the wireless, and it said, you know, how, and they were talking to people that had been in the camp and that sort of thing. And they all said the same thing, that they celebrated all the festivals and everything, and in the best weather, the way that they could.
The one thing that concerns me is different things that we could do. First of all, that if you treat it as a messianic psalm and just that it is a kind of a prophecy or whatever, and it removes it from the reality of life. And the other thing that we could do with it is have the emphasis, like the part that Chris has been reading to us, you know, that this is the dark time, but there's something better that's coming. And in some people's experience, of course, it doesn't get better until they get to heaven. You know, people are tortured, people have been cruelly treated, and that's been the end of their life. So they may have had a wonderful life serving God and being faithful to God, but it all goes apparently wrong at the end and is terrible. And I think we need to be careful that we don't pretty it up, that we're prepared to say that sometimes it all goes wrong, and there isn't an Easter Sunday in people's living experience, and that's true of quite a lot of people. So on the line, it's trying to hold these things together is a challenge, but to trust God through it all is the important thing. We have 3 different kinds of animals mentioned in this psalm. We've got bulls who are surrounding him, encircling him. These Bashan is where the Golan Heights are. So they were thought to be well fed and strong. So that there was strength. His enemies were strong around him. And then they're like roaring lions. So you're about to tear their prey, opening their mouths wide and trying to get a grip, all of that. And then later on, he talks about dogs being surrounding him in verse 16. Dogs, a pack of villains encircle me.
He also talks about being a worm much earlier in verse 6, I think.
Verse 21, we've got wild oxen.
Yeah, well, I think that's links back to the bulls.
So save me from the horns of the wild oxen. Yeah.
Yes.
Got lions in verse 21 as well. Lions and wild bulls.
Yes.
And I have unicorns.
Oh, goodness.
Right.
You would have.
Where are
Verse
they?
21.
Which verse are they?
You mean they did exist after all?
Either 21 or 22.
Oh.
Goodness.
But thou hast heard me from the horns of the unicorns.
Wow.
Gosh.
Yeah, that'd be a translation of verse 21 then, I should think.
Yeah, because mine is save me from. You rescue me from the mouth of lions. Save me from the horns of the wild oxen.
Does his using the illustration of being surrounded and attacked by animals, does that sort of make the whole thing worse? That's how he's feeling. He wasn't surrounded by bulls or facing a lion. This is his poetry coming out. But does it by using this, does it make it seem more intense?
Yeah, yeah. Because there's no escape, is there? There's the men are mocking, and the animals are devouring, threatening to devour.
Yes. I thought devouring and destroying, that you've got a note of hope again in verse 19 starts, but you, Lord, do not be far from me. So all these things are against me, but you are not far from me. Do not be far from me.
In this verse 12 with the bulls, he's talking about, is it of the gods? People are turning to idols, because that would be a problem for him as king. Because the strong bulls of Bashan, are they idols? Don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there are any lion gods, but there were bull gods, weren't there? Yeah. But I think also these were probably the wild animals that they were afraid of at that time. Lions and wild bulls and dogs, in a way. Sort of dogs weren't King Charles Spaniels and nice little cute things. They were vicious packs, scavengers, vermin, really.
Yeah.
So by talking about the pack of villains and calling them dogs, he's insulted them.
I used to find
The sense of complete and utter helplessness and fear.
Yeah.
Were there many lions around there? Because we think of lions as a very African thing.
mountain lions, are they pumas or something?
Yes.
I think the mountain lion.
There's There's lions in Samson's time. Because he
Yeah.
found the
Oh,
honeycomb.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. He
So I
broke the
think there
jaw.
were a lot of wild out lions.
So verses 16 to 18 are very strongly tied to the crucifixion, aren't they? So,
Yes.
so it's not to say that it wasn't a personal experience, but it did also point to the crucifixion. So there's the piercing of hands and feet. The bones on display could have been referring to the fact that he was stripped naked. People stare and gloat, that was going on. And then dividing the clothes among them, casting lots for his garment, which is obviously what the soldiers did.
Mm. But if it's not prophetic, it's absolutely remarkable that he should include that description.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. Well, I think we could take it that he's describing how he is feeling himself, but in the process, he says things that are used in the New Testament to say that's why it's there. That's why it comes in Psalm 22. So
despite all that, where is it? Yes, in verse 19, but you, Lord, do not be far from me. He still acknowledges when he says, you are my strength. Come quickly to help me. Despite feeling utterly wretched and in despair, he still holds to God as his strength. Like a message to us that that's what we should do.
Yes. Yes. If God seems far away, if your prayers are not being answered, don't lose hope in him. Just hold on. And there's bits of sort of interesting poetry. So you've got a pattern that appears in that section. You've got help me, deliver me, rescue me and save me.
Yes.
I'm interested in David as a musician, because he would have intended this to be sung, and therefore he would have been conscious in how he constructed it. You know, you can't compose a song and let it just kind of amble on and think, right, I'll stop now because I've stopped feeling all I'm feeling, and let the singers make of it what they will. He's had to think about how to construct it in a way which would make sense to singers. So at some point he's decided that he will start praising God. So, you know, I wonder whether that was when he stopped feeling so desperate, or whether he's looking back at a desperate period and said, well, you know, I'm going to trust God, and therefore at this point I'm going to change the nature of what I'm writing, and this is where the praise is going to start, and so on. I'm wondering, you know, what at what point did he start putting it into a different shape, and it wasn't just a outpouring of what his emotions were.
Verse 19 has a kind of like a turning point where it says, but you, Lord, do not be far from me, and where you are my strength. But it's in that first verse 19 that he introduces the fact that the God that he's looking to is the covenant-keeping God. It's Yahweh, but you, Yahweh, do not be far from me. You are my strength. Come quickly to help me. So he's introduced into his psalm that who it is that God is. He is. I am. You know, he's the one who is able to do all sorts of things. He's still the provider, the healer, and so on.
I've got an NIV study Bible, and it just makes a comment about verse 22, I will declare your name to my people in the assembly. I will praise you. It's like Doc was saying, it's like a turnaround.
Yes.
The comment that they make about it, it says, David will praise God among the people because his private deliverance deserved a public testimony. God may wonderfully rescue us in the quiet moments when we are hurting, and we should be prepared to offer public praise for his care.
Yes.
That sums up
Yeah.
our trust in God and how we should draw us to take steps towards knowing that.
You know the verses 9 to 11. When I read those, I applied them to myself too, because I feel right from even before I was born. I think there's another psalm says something about, or is that as I knew you in your mother's womb, there's somewhere else.
That was last week, wasn't it? 139.
Yeah, that's it. I've always felt that God has known me and been cared for me right from then. Now, David was talking about himself there, but can we all say that?
Comes back in the sense of the fact that God has known us. And in the other psalm, it talks about God knowing us from where we were there. And here he said, you brought me out of the womb. You made me trust in you, even from my mother's breast. You know, from birth I was cast on you. So that sense of God having a plan and purpose in our lives that goes back to before we were born. It's a wonderful thing to be aware of that. And it doesn't take away our independence. It's just that our choices are found to be in his will. So let's move on. We've got an introduction to 22. So he's talking about God coming to his rescue. He's talking about praising God and encouraging other people to praise. He's saying, God has not despised or scorned the suffering of the afflicted one. Other people are doing that, but God is not doing it. He has listened to his cry for help. So that's the positive coming through, particularly in verse 24. And 25, from you comes the theme of my praise in the great assembly. So he's praising God, going to praise God for his deliverance. There is this sense of the universal salvation also. It comes in verse 27, all the ends of the earth will remember and turn to the Lord. All the families of the nations will bow down before him, for dominion belongs to the Lord. He rules over the nations. God has not lost the people, but he's in the business of salvation and redemption. And then verse 29 gives us a picture of the rich coming and then the poor coming. All who go down to the dust, I think, means people that are pretty poor in a bad way. So those who have means and those who don't have means, they will come and worship and acknowledge the Lord. And it's something that goes on not only across the world, but throughout time. So posterity will serve him. Future generations will be told about the Lord. So that's, it's universal. It's a global expression of acknowledging God, and also it's acknowledging God down through time.
Those last verses, like Clive was saying, very uplifting, and it's a sense of God's real triumph, to bring us through.
What with the last phrase?
Yeah.
He's
Well,
done
it
it.
means you and
Yeah,
me,
he's
we're
done it.
all
I
in
love
this.
that.
Done it.
Yeah,
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 we're all part of this, aren't we?
yes.
Because it's for those unborn, so that's us.
Does the phrase "he's done it" also make you think about something that Jesus said on the cross?
Cross. It is
It's
done.
finished.
Finished.
Yes.
Done it.
Yeah.
And so, as Christians, looking back on God's plan and purposes down through the millennia, we could see how God's plan of salvation was being proclaimed and then unfolded and revealed and then lived out by the first apostles and Christians, and now by you and me.
Yes.
So we're part of the posterity that will serve him, part of the future generations who've been told about the Lord.
Yeah.
Breathtaking, isn't it? I think
It is.
we can read this and think we're now included in it all.
Yeah.
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 And Jesus,
So what-
when he was praying in the garden just before he died, that last section of his prayer, he mentions for those not born. And I think it's wonderful knowing that even Jesus, as he was getting ready to die, thought of us,
Yes.
you know, you and me.
And again, those who will believe through their word.
Yeah.
So God has had a plan and a purpose for eternity, for salvation of people, even those who rejected him and turned away from him, didn't want him, abused him. Still he loves them, and still he died for them. He just died for the nice people like you and me.
Yeah.
So it is a curious, we're in agreement, I think it's a curious psalm. Are we in agreement that, in at least to some extent, this is about David just describing his own sense of wretchedness and the fact that God seemed to have forgotten him? Are we all okay with that?
Well, what I've learned, which I hadn't thought before, and it started with what Clive said, and what you've all been saying since, is that actually this is a psalm of great reassurance, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's what Clive was meaning. So instead of
also
looking this as whether it's prophetic or what, it's actually a psalm to reassure us when we're at our depth.
It operates on more than one level, doesn't it? And I thought, and reading it through yesterday, I thought that the people of Israel must have felt like this at times, surrounded by their enemies, you know. God had put them into that situation.
Anyway, thank you for your patience. When I chose it, I thought, should I? It's not what you would call a nice psalm. And but it is one it has fascinated me for a long time, and little bits have been a great help to me at times. And I've certainly learned more as all putting it together. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Jean.
Last comments. Let's go around. Who else? Anybody got a last comment?
I don't want to finish, but it's exciting and it's unbelievable. It's exciting in so much that what it says in that to each one of us, but it's unbelievable, even me.
Yeah.
So you don't believe?
It is.
I do believe. It's unbelievable to a miserable creature like me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Me too.
Yes.
Anybody else want to add a final comment?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so can I just take you back to the Star Trek story? Once they, it's all worked out okay, that the comet or whatever it was obviously designed. They knew this is peculiar. Someone has designed this. There's a purpose for it, you know, and they see that its purpose is not to cause destruction, but to actually bring blessing to people. And then they reflect on the fact, well, that means that whoever designed this knew that we would interact and we would push it off course. You know, that was part of the plan.
Wow.
And so it's really quite incredible. And they end up amazed and awestruck with who could have done this. How many other little comets like this are there floating around? And who is it that has so much intelligence, this greater person who has created this thing that looks like an ordinary comet, but is much, much more. And I kind of thought this is such a wonderful parable. So anyway, that's Star Trek Series 3, Episode 2. If you want to find it, it's on ITVX.